Good evening, everybody. No. That didn't work. Good evening, everybody. Oh, very nice, very nice. Nice to see you here, lady and many gentlemen. So in the next 25 to 30 minutes, I'm going to take you through the exciting story. What I have found many DevOps engineers are unfortunately struggling with because they were never trained on the art of working with the code, or that many developers actually learn somehow automagically. I said automagically, it's not a slip of tongue. So this talk actually began maybe 4 years ago. I was working for one big company having to do with airplanes somewhere in Schiphol. And it was down to me to manage one mission critical components where things were not running very well, but we were making steady progress. So I was doing kind of one-on-ones periodically with solution architect from the vendor, and I was kind of briefing her on few improvements that I actually managed to do. And when I was presenting this, let's see, does it work? Yeah. Now this is the moment. So. Now it works. So when I was presenting this to her, I thought, well, I'm telling to her such an obvious thing, so she will laugh me out. And what happened then was actually amazing, because, well, she's from the East Coast and she just exploded. So, Alex, you've done such a breakthrough, you know, we have to tell this to other customers. Can you write a user story out of it? Well, not a user story, but the success story, and actually you still can find it on the internet. And as we were writing this, I was amazed when we ran the calculations. It turned out that application one very simple development technique has quadrupled the performance of the team. I was like, wow, I didn't know that at the time that good. And after that, I have stumbled upon multiple organizations and multiple teams with multiple contexts, which struggle with exactly the same things. And it kind of brought me to here to share with you kind of this sense of direction. So how to get out of the mess that people tend to get themselves into. So for now who don't know me, my name is Alex. I say that I'm a solution architect. And what this means, I do exactly like this. I help teams to get out of the mess in most efficient way. Here is the QR code to my LinkedIn. So I think we will share the slides, but if you want to, you can always find me on, and link in with me and let's talk about software and DevOps. Now going back, coding. Well, actually, the things don't run very well in IT. It's not a new thing. Have you heard about this exciting book, Death March, by Edward Jordan? Well, the thing is, if you look at the date, it was published in 1999. And most of the things what written in these books are actually true about management, so we didn't evolve. You know, because this book actually comes from 20 years of pain, which started in the 70s. And, it's an interesting thing. However, what I have noticed, there is yet another flavor of death marches that occur in DevOps operations, which this book doesn't cover. It has to do with how people treat actually code. And this reason is quite amazing. I personally think that the people treat code as an asset, and they couldn't be more wrong about it. Yes, people treat code as an asset, and this is not correct way. Intrigued? Let me take a step back. So, who have heard about the term wipe coding? Okay, so who is wipe coding at work? Okay. So the thing is, the fact that we don't need software developers has been floating around for quite some time. The latest one that has a decent story is from at least 10 years ago. 10 years before it, when Google came out, it was exactly the same story. So the Google will replace software development. But guess what? What we know, the opposite has happened. So what's going on? Well, people who see that what developers do, the developers do blip, 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 blop, bloop, and then produce the code. And they think that this is what happens. But no, Something else is going on. You need to have requirements. In a world where we have wipe coding, if I would say most big organizations tend to be doing wipe requirement management, what do you think what I'm referring to?
They don't really know what the requirements are.
Continue.
And they don't know how to communicate.
Continue.
16 change requests for the same project.
Continue. The thing is, so what really happens in reality is that all of that is true. So I have come across very smart people and I have very lost with directions people, and that's what they treat the developer sort of say as a magical box, right? So I will say, ooh, yeah, I need to do this, I need to do that, and at the moment it is intuitive. Do it. 1 week. This is what I call wipe requirement management. Actually has been going on for quite some time. And believe it or not, there are even memes about that. Nice. So kind of you see the quality of the picture is awful, but this is actually how old this thing is. But the thing is, you know, when I was young, I was sort of saying, oh my God, this is horrible. But then as I was getting older, I have realized, well, it is horrible, but this is the reality. We need to deal with it. So what are we dealing with? This is what the customer describes. But then what he wants is this. So this is what they expect you to get out of it. And essentially, what the art of doing projects, the art of kind of solving problems with IT is to embrace this inconvenient truth. The code is a temporary solution at rest that has most critical considerations removed. It's not a good product. You want to have as little as this. It's very strange to hear from somebody who spent 25 years in IT saying, hey, you don't want to code, right? But listen, bear with me, there are a few interesting twists to that. Let's take a look at this, what happens, right? In development, there is this idea of first wave developer. Have you heard this term, first wave developer? It's a developer who knows everything how the system is built. So maybe he was there from the very beginning. That's why he is called first wave. And because this guy knows everything, he has no trouble coding. So for the first wave developer, the language just doesn't matter. You know, if I want to tell you the story, I can speak to you in English, ik spreek Netherlands. Maybe I can speak German with a little bit of translation, but it doesn't matter. You know, I'm still conveying the same. Language doesn't really play a matter until you hit the right side of this picture, that you have the artifact. You can't go back. That's a whole thing. Looking at the code, you can't figure out why it exists, because what is removed are the trade-offs. In any sufficiently big project, there are always trade-offs, and very frequently they are even not technical. And sometimes you have a second wave or third wave or fourth wave when you come in 5-6 years after this code base was conceived, and you start looking at this, asking yourself why this thing exists. Because the thing is, the construction actually can be limited by the decisions of the manager, which is no longer with the company. But this is erased. And we keep working around it. It's horrible, actually. So if you look at where the horrible costs are coming from for the second wave, they're actually coming from finding out what to change. So how doing actual work is not that hard. And let me tell you the story, actually how hard it can be. It was 2017, I think. I came to one client who said, well, we want to improve the quality of our API economy that we're producing. I said, okay, let me take a look at your API management team. I look at them and said, well, they're doing only API operations, they're not doing management part, but okay. Next day, I was looking at, I had one-on-one with my hiring manager, and he asked me, well, what have you seen? Well, I explained, well, I said, they do this and this and this. Well, I see that you have a team which does operations. He said, no, we do development. I said, what have I missed? Because in order to be a development team, you need to do development work, right? He said, no, this is it. We do operations, but we think that we are developers. I said, okay. So then what's the point? And then he mentioned a thing that kind of struck me dead. He said, well, we guard this product. I said, okay, I've never heard this story, but what do you guard it against? And he got very mad. So for me, it was like, how can a piece of the customer within the first 24 hours of being hired? But then what I'm telling you is that, well, sometimes it's not that hard to come to the point that even your team does not need to exist into which you are hired. This is how badly it can get out of control. And the thing is, it is shockingly common. So if it happens to you, do not think that this is a fate. You're just part of the statistics. So, but there is a way out. A way out is to become a unicorn developer and begin practicing a few interesting things with your mindset. So how do you see the world? And it begins with one interesting point, that outside of your team, nobody cares how beautiful your product is. Because the business wants to capture this big, hairy, audacious goal. For example, they want to sell more things, they want to make more money, they want to expand the customer base, you name it. The IT system for them, is only means to an end. They need this to run. And infra is just a part of it. Well, it is inconvenient truth, but we need to take a look at the broader picture that means to an end needs to be continuously deployed. We need to have a well thought of the pipelines, right? And those pipelines, they somehow need to be friendly with the how people develop for them. Because look, the truth is, if everybody will work on the silos, it will not work end to end. It will not. It will be like continuous fire. So, what should you focus on? After 25 years, I would say that if you want to improve your quality of delivery, this is perhaps the one KPI that you want to look at. How to optimize your end-to-end chain. Developer experience. Value by friction. I like this equation because it kind of sort of tells you what to do. Maximize value while minimizing friction. How hard can it be? Well, it turns out very. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing in front of you here. I want to ask you the question. Let's say you are hired to improve a situation on things where a lot of things are broken. Developers are not getting a good deployment platform, and process of requesting is total waste. You can attack only one part of this equation. Where would you begin? Who thinks they will start by increasing the value? Can you guys raise hands? Okay, nobody's raising hands. Interesting. So does it mean that you will start working on reducing friction? Okay, so you guys are not convinced. Who is not convinced? All right. Look, the thing is, if you ask my opinion, then probably you need to start by increasing the value, but it's not the right moment to start. What I have seen quite a lot of people do, they fall into what is referred to as a build trap. If you have not read this book, Escaping the Build Trap, I highly recommend it to figure out how to actually start focusing on what really matters. The build trap refers to a situation with the projects where people kind of continuously build, but the more they build, the worse it becomes. Who has experienced something like that? You are in the build trap. You need to do it. So kind of it's product. It's not even tech. It's product. It's a definition of work which you need to do. But then, even if you have good products, so how do you arrange your work? In development, it's surprisingly, there is a default answer to that. Wake up any solution architect in the middle of the night, and probably they will give you these 5 bullet points. Well, of course, I will not be diving into this. It is kind of very broad subject. It will take years of practice to let it learn. Let's take a look at this. Technology excellence. And I want to put it one thing. Every solution architect worth the salt of its nipples will tell you, you build to change. Because, as I mentioned to you, all code is temporary by definition. It is not there to last. So you have to have an easy means of changing it, throwing it out and rebuilding it. It's normal, right? So what stops DevOps, typical things, from actually being technologically excellent? And right now I'm speaking from my personal experience. If you will be triggered, that's great. So if you're not, then you're lucky, right? If you have a comment, so I'm very happy to talk about with them. And by the way, if you feel that you have an amazing thing, feel free to throw it me. No worries. Variables. For a developer, when I would look at typical Terraform module or Helm chart variables, there are way too many. There are painfully many developers. And I see how it happens. Because what begins, somebody from DevOps department said, well, we need to automate this. I said, all right, I'm going to automate it. And then poor developer says, you have to use this module because it is a company policy. Yes, but how many variables are there? Well, there is this number, which I think 70, that I have seen across the organization. Any single, most deployments would require input from 70 parameters. From the development perspective, this is shockingly horrible design because you want to minimize it. You want to have as little variables as possible. So what exactly is, yes?
Yeah, I'm sorry, variables is not the problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's all about defaults.
Yes, go ahead.
If you can specify, so if your product or your module can accept, in the most cases, proper defaults,
yeah,
then you're good to go. And if you have only two variables,
exactly, exactly. Great.
Environment dev stage prod is a variable.
Great. I will be covering exactly your comments a bit later in my presentations. Did I trigger anybody else? Yeah?
Trigger in the positive sense.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Now, the thing is that why developers are not complaining about this is because developers actually read code most of the time. So essentially, if you give me the module, which has too many things, I will open it up and I will read it. But if you look from the position of engineering manager, so is it a good thing? Because you force a lot of developers to do the thing which is avoidable. It's avoidable cost. So how to fix it? Well, actually, it's quite simple. How to reduce the cognitive load on poor developer? Simply delineate what is true variable, like environment. And what I have seen a lot of people intertwine variables with artifacts and architectural dependencies. Just split them up, make it simple. To say, we have 20 things from the infrastructure, it's clear, right? These are the artifacts and these are the conditions to give them. And actually we have 2 or 3 things that actually vary. This very simple X also has enormous effects on straightening the experience. But it doesn't go far. Because if you look at how you structure the code, suddenly you would remember that back in 1994, it's more than 30 years ago, in development, there was an interesting book, The Patterns of Software Composition. Well, I don't remember the exact title, but then everybody knows in development, again, of 4 design patterns. So what are these? It turns out that there are actually around 20 very repeating approaches how almost all well-written software is written. And what I have personally found is that there are actually 6 patterns that appear very frequently in DevOps code. These pictures, by the way, are not mine. They are taken from exciting site Refactoring Guru. So if you Google it, you can find it. I do encourage you to read it. They have brilliant material with explanations. And the thing is, in my experience, the single most underused design pattern is facade. What does it tell? Facade simply says that you can encapsulate something complex with a simple interface. So let's say this is the missing piece. You're trying to make a module which has way too many variables for technical reasons, but as a DevOps, can you please give me something which is experience layer? Just wrap it up. It's that simple. Nobody does it. This is something which in development is like kind of almost automatic, but then we never trained DevOps engineers to be even aware that these patterns actually exist. And they exist like an awful years. It's oops. Next thing, microservices. So what's up with microservices? Well, microservices, actually, it turns out it's not a technology. It is socio-technology. Either it is a solution for, either it is a social solution to the technical problem of complexity, or it is a technological solution for the social problem of communication. Because let's say, if you have environment like original, let's say some stories point that why why Amazon actually invented them, because things were breaking all the time, and people were finger pointing at each other. That's kind of where it came from. I don't know if it's true, but I totally see that happening. But the thing is, this is what happens. You get any regulated growth, as I say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? And you can have your microservices, but in reality, it just becomes big ball of mud. Everything is connected to everything. By the way, I think that everything is connected to everything is normal. This is what most architecture of any big, sufficiently long project actually tends to evolve to, unless you actually make certain actions. And what kind of struck me is last year I was listening a presentation by a famous trainer, Victor Rentier, and he was talking about a new concept. It's called modulith. We had monolith, then we decided we want to bring it, we want to convert it into microservices, and right now we want to have it modulith. And when I heard it, I said I couldn't believe it, because it was 1998, graded which object-oriented analysis. Yeah, and I literally saw this poster. As you can see, it was in a German company, Ordnung muss sein, so absolutely no exceptions. But then, this is it. This is the forgotten art of loose coupling and high cohesion. So, kind of, it's something that kind of in development kind of happens very, I would say right now, very naturally, right? People who know this art, they kind of just look at these concepts. But nobody told, unfortunate DevOps engineers that this exists. My favorite part, code smells. Did you look at your own at the code you wrote a year ago? No. Would you look at the code that you wrote a year ago? Would you like it?
Yes.
Well, it turns out that code rots. And when it rots, it smells. All code bases stink, right? So if you want to find the company that manages a code which doesn't stink, you're looking for something which doesn't exist in this universe. It's not about that it doesn't stink. The question is, do you like how it stinks? That's the thing, as I say. And but then these pictures are also from Refactoring Guru site. What these actually kind of concepts pointed at is that when code evolves, sometimes we kind of say, well, I need maintenance. I need somebody to please rewrite me. Because things get bigger, or kind of things gravitate. You had one idea, or you had one problem, but it drifts from how it was originally conceived. In my personal experience, what I have seen, the go-to cold smell that exists in sufficiently long-running DevOps operations is this, shotgun surgery. What does it mean? You want to make a change, but you have to go through the layers and you have to change many things to make simple things. You introduce one parameter and you and guess what? You get it wrong because you keep forgetting things, right? Who's got similar experiences? Well, obviously you are not unique. You know, in development, it's gonna be we have pictures about it, right? So that's quite nice. However, in development, there is this idea of also functional programming. So what is functional programming? Is that you write things to do stuff, right? So you have a function, you call it, and it does you something. And there is this idea that there are also pure functions, because pure functions don't cause side effects. Now, let me explain. Let's take a look at this infrastructure code. It tries to deploy an API into Azure. What do you see? What are the problems with this piece of code? You can use ChatGPT if you want.
Elves that might not align,
Sorry?
different elf variables that might or might not align.
All right, okay. Continue.
There's a slash in the display name which can, if there's a slash in a class, it can also break.
Right, okay.
Service and behavior visual.
Right, okay, look. The hint is here. It is implicit or inappropriate side effects. So look, you have a module that will only place the thing that which you want into specific instances. Only place in specific instances. You're right. It can break certain things, but then this is a sort of, side effect. So, and then what I have seen is that the way most code written by inexperienced DevOps engineers, it's actually full of it. So you call one thing, and then it does things under surface, which first of all is easily forgotten, very easy to miss. It's probably never tested, and yeah, it's the source, endless source of grievances. And by the way, it's endless source of jobs. So what I'm telling you right now is very bad for economy, right? So, but then the question is then, even if you would want to refactor it, should you? If you ask me, well, to know the answer, you need to go to the future and come back, because the question is, what will be in 3 years? Now, what I will introduce you to perhaps the thing that will blow your mind. We have, in development, after 50 years, figured out on one thing, that it depends. We make up the rules, but there are circumstances where you need to break the rules. And one of them, which begins to contradict everything I told you before, is the principle of Yagni. Who have heard about that? Okay, no, not too many. The principle says you ain't gonna need it. So it comes from, let's say, the early days when the software development cycles were long and people were requesting everything. Things that they needed and most things they didn't. And then it was actually pioneered by Ken Beck, one of the, let's say, authors of extreme programming, that you actually do not need to code things that are not immediately required. This is where it comes from. And in the late 90s, it was like a revolution. So how come you do not build for the future? And people were saying, well, you have to do the simplest things that can possibly work. That's what the whole thing's all about. And when you write the user stories, they need to meet the invest criteria. By the way, have you heard about the invest criteria? Okay, so it looks like we need to have a completely different session of how to do Scrum properly, because people don't know it. Invest criteria stands for individual, negotiable, valuable, estimable, specific and testable. Well, I don't want to spend time on this. If you want to, I will be happy to give you these answers. But the idea is, keep your story small and focus on the value, because this guy, John Carmack, who wrote Quake, everybody played Quake in the room? All right. Once said, it's architecting for something that you don't need almost never turns zero positive. Almost never. Just be brave to do it. But then how do you do that? You don't need to repeat yourself. It's another interesting concept that says that a piece of code, any piece of code, is actually a solution to a very specific problem. And if you want to have a maintainable code base, what you need to do, you need to define sort of, problems and their solutions. And because it really helps you to maintain a solution to the problem as problems evolve. The original intention is to reduce the duplication of the code, but then there is a contradiction in this rule itself. Some duplication is actually good and necessary. What this don't repeat yourself principle goes kind of in contradiction is to cargo called programming mainly. Have you heard this concept, cargo called programming? Some people did, some people didn't. Well, let's say if you take a junior developer and he finds something and he copy pastes without understanding what the code is doing. Well, kind of, it was the early days of web development, but still the same. Well, the danger is, if you don't do it, you end up with repeated things across your code base that you don't remember, they're not tested, and it's like endless source of bugs. That's what we're trying to do. And a piece of advice, if you see too many, it's a garbage code, not to be saved. We're starting getting closer to the end. So kind of what are the, second from the last point that I want to share with you, solid principles. Have you heard about that? Anybody? All right, okay, so then I can actually go very quick here. What is the one thing that I see in practice that goes not optimal? People try to invent one solution for everything. And this is especially true in big corporate environments. But then the thing is, if you try to invent one solution that fits everybody, you actually invent a solution that fits nobody in particular. That's the whole thing. So, and then the list of substitution principle applied to DevOps. That's probably my phone.
It's yours.
Yeah. Just, just if you take it back and to take it outside, that's fine. Yeah. 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 So, list of substitution principle. You have a pipeline, but then you need to be able to replace parts of the designs without consequences. For example, that's really annoying. Martin, can you take the bag outside? Yeah. Let's say you want to do 5 deployments a day. Well, that's fine, yeah. No problem. What about 5 deployments an hour? What about 50 deployments an hour? What about 500 deployments an hour, right? So those are very different things. And you need to have one pipeline where you need to swap things in and out. And finally, what does this whole thing prevent? Solid prevents descending into clickers of DevOps. This is actually a very painful thing because the moment you start seeing that the engineers do not follow these rules, they start making exceptions, small exceptions. A suboptimal thing here, suboptimal thing there, and then your self-service is not really self-service. You need to have to ask 3 tickets for somebody to do the setup so that you can run something, right? Well, it happens. Well, I hope it doesn't happen to you, but if it does, you're part of the statistics, right? So let's try to make the world better. And finally, what I was promising, convention over configuration. What this thing goes about is that we need to remember that people are also part of a solution. And whenever we automate, we never automate in vacuum. It's all about mental picture. So you code to the mental picture of people who are around. And if you say, well, I do not want to astonish people. Let's say if we have the org, which says, we do REST service. So let's just do something that we all understand, right? So, and the reason why it exists is that if you want to go for a lot of explicit configurations, you end up with a lot of the boilerplate code. Let's say you want to explicitly configure 500 individual API endpoints. You're smart. You said you've done it in Terraform. New Terraform new Terraform version comes. You need to upgrade. You need to upgrade 500. A year later, you have 1,500 modules. Now a new provider comes on. Now you need to upgrade 1,500, right? If you keep doing this boilerplate, it kind of sucks in the energy out of you. So, and that's what convention over configuration says. Remove all the code that you can get away and replace it with convention so that you don't have to maintain it. So far, I hope it makes sense. So why you want to do it? Because ultimately, you want to deliver faster. So you don't want to spend your time on things you can avoid. Finally, if you want to ask me, well, Alex, so what should we remember? out of this thing. There was lots of things. You can try typing this into ChatGPT. Well, the truth is, it depends. There's no such thing as one size fits all engineering. And you would do different things in different contexts. But this is still abstract. And I was working on the slides. I figured out that I cannot leave this talk without giving you a big bang. What I wanted you to remember, if you will forget everything I've told you before, is one very simple piece of advice that's been around for more than 30 years. If you want to get ahead as a developer, always code as if the guy who ends up maintaining it is a violent psychopath who knows where you live. Never fails. And trust me, because that guy is your future self. So no need to thank me, right? So that's everything that I wanted to share with you. On this note, I'm happy to take questions.
I'm all for smart engineers.
Yeah.
What's the role of a product owner in the story of getting the right requirements? So I don't fully agree that an engineer should have pushbacks to stakeholders. I think
Yeah.
it's also the product
Yeah.
owner who has to have a clear requirement, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. So, the product owner plays absolutely crucial role in a well-functioning product organization. I would say that in practice, the single most important role of the product owner is to radiate contagious optimism to the team and serve as a motivator. Why? If you have a person who is transactionally doing this role, the team will not perform. The team will not do it. And also indeed the role of the product owner is to have clarity about the value. So how should I put it? It's always pleasant to work with a guy who is not technical, but who is able to explain why he needs it and he's passionate about it. And if he's more technical or less, that's fine. But then this is the thing. So to explain why are we doing this? To whose benefit? To whose benefit is this? And be able to to maintain this proper conversation with the engineers. And of course, the role of the product owner, in my opinion, is to align stakeholders. Because if you say that there is, let's say, complex organization, there are different interests in different parties, the role of the product owner is to have the agreement. So what do we need to do? What is the goal? So that is, I would say, the single most important contribution that a well-functioning product owner will bring to the table. And then, of course, he will have a conversation with the team how to do it or how not to do it. Have I answered your question?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the picture you showed about
Yeah.
the customer wants and what was built.
Yeah,
It's actually also the role of the product owner, right? To have the right context for that.
correct. Yeah.
How do you get people out of private code programs?
Well, this is very difficult question. The thing is, because it speaks to intrinsic motivation of individuals. Let's say, I would say that if this is your job to get people out of it, no?
It's not my job.
No, yeah.
Like, I'm curious.
Okay.
Yes, a lot, but
All right.
how do you help these people?
All right. Okay. So, you want to give an answer?
A bit best
Yeah.
way to do it is use code review, for instance. So you have
I just know that code exists.
Yeah.
I don't actually interact with it that much.
Yeah.
I just know it exists over there.
Yeah.
See it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, one side is psychological, right? So if someone wants to just copy-paste things, then it's something they do. But I think the thing is, like, it's more often it's juniors, and so you need someone else to kind of say, look, this is, you even understand this thing what you're doing, right? So if you do code review, then you challenge each other a little bit, like, okay, do you really know what you're doing? And if you don't, then
Exactly.
so do something about it.
Exactly. There are two elements here. If we talk about, let's say, people who grow, The first one is having a clearly communicated goals for the team itself. This is more kind of a task that would fall on the shoulders of the engineering manager to say, well, how much the team should perform. What I have observed is that people who are new to a profession, they do not have any idea how much work should an engineer turn over. Let's say, kind of, if you want to create, let's say, a module that trivially wraps kind of few resources, how long should it work? 1 day, 1 week, 1 month? And then if you don't know. And the second one is, this is what I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Stephen.
So what Stephen have just correctly said, feedback. So it needs to be communicated constructively to people. Say, hey, look, this is what you need to do. Otherwise, indeed, it's like it's going to be a situation with a free fall. So if it is socially acceptable with him to do this, and if people do not feel that well, they need to do a better job, nothing will happen.
Feedback sets the bar, kind of.
Yes.
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 On this question,
Yeah.
what if the feedback is also, well, the standards are basically practicing code building,
Yeah.
and the feedback that the people get is still, well, good job.
It's not just one team.
Yeah.
It's like the whole team is circle.
Right. Right. So,
Well, more, I think the question is more about
yeah.
how do you get certain ideas of standardization, for example,
Yeah.
out of them? Well, you try to explain to them why
Yeah.
it is basically meaningless
Right.
to follow it.
Right. Okay. It's gonna be a long answer. So, look, you actually touched the how should I put it, the subject that actually I teach about personal efficiency, and what you refer to is to one of the elements that I explain about resistance of the individual to change. Let me give you kind of Reader's Digest for it, and then we can perhaps take it offline because it's worth a separate conversation. There are actually 5 levels of resistance. First one, I don't understand what you talk about. Second one, I understand what you talk about, but I don't have it. Third one is, I understand the problem, but it needs to be solved differently. Fourth one is, solving this problem will create more issues. And the fifth one, procrastination. I know what you're saying, I agree with you, I'm not doing it. So depending on which kind of levels of resistance you see, because this is something of what you describe, you need to pick different strategies. And the thing is, here is that if it's not a straightforward situation, because if the people resist, it doesn't mean that they do not like the job. You know, two statements can be true. You have an engineer who likes his job and he sees that there are unintended consequences and therefore he's resisting. Or you have an engineer who doesn't want to change because, well, he's not motivated and he's resisting the change. And within a team, both statements can be true depending on which individuals you apply. So it is a kind of tricky thing. But overall idea, how to do that, you need to work with the resistance of the individuals. And what works in your case depends. It's always on the other side of the table. Is this answer helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
At some point you talked about design patterns,
Yeah.
but was it your point to implement also design patterns in Terraform code, Ansible playbooks, from that perspective?
Absolutely. It's very funny because even today I had a conversation with the boss of my boss, and he told me, Alex, you can't believe how many errors did we find in Ansible playbooks simply because nobody bothered to test them. So yes, kind of following proper design patterns helps you to structure the Terraform modules to be testable and the playbooks to be testable. And it kind of removes a lot of, let's say, kind of incidents which are caused by typos. So yes, kind of doing design patterns, yes, helps. Yes, yeah.
That's also true for the resources we consume, for example, using Azure.
Yeah.
I'm currently working with the Azure Verified modules.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's like they use the bicep guys to program the Terraform modules. They make exactly the same problems which bicep already had, Terraform already solved, and then put it back in the code again.
Yeah, this is how humans actually behave. Actually, it does not surprise me, because people always fall on things that they know best. And this is actually what is called the proliferation of constraints. So there's a good expression. It's very tempting to treat everything as a nail if the only tool that you know is a hammer. And if you would say that in the DevOps, it's for a junior developer, it will be very tempting to try to template everything if the only thing that they know is templated. And the same thing, yes. So I have this kind of flavor of let's say work and I port in it. It is actually in the defense of these individuals. This is very a known problem in development, with people let's say jumping between languages, because in different programming languages there are what is called idiomatic code. So how do you write code for different things? And for example, the same problem written in TypeScript would be different from Java, would be different from Golang. And when people switch languages, old habits die hard. And this is kind of common, let's say, adaptation period that you see. Like if the guy comes, for example, from TypeScript, he will try to use callbacks where needed and unneeded. Yeah, so and it's kind of the whole discussion. But then it's a fact of life. It's just a fact of life. Yes, Victor.
Yeah, I think it's not a question, it's just a concern that you first implement the API, like developers, you implement the API, for instance, Azure or AWS, where you accept million of parameters. For instance, I want to spin up an EC2 instance. I have to pass like million parameters to spin up a correct instance type, appropriate EBS volume storage, and etc., 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 etc. And now you are telling me to develop a module that doesn't have a lot of variables. How does it fit?
There are comments, guys. Go ahead.
A couple of years ago, I worked with a bunch of Terraform modules by Cloud Policy, and they actually did some design pattern-like things. So the example, like, okay, because of flexibility, you want to be able to be used in all kinds of organizations. You have like 70 variables. And a lot of them is boilerplate, like availability zone, Amazon account, VPC ID, God knows what, common text. And they kind of introduced this concept like a sort of context module, which holds all those boilerplate things, and is provided as a unit to basically every compatible module they offer. So you pass in the boilerplate, you don't care, and then the variables that actually matter are the ones that are that stand out. And that way of structuring Terraform, I haven't seen it very often, but it kind of reminds me of the design patterns you see in software. It's really interesting.
I think I saw another hand.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with a lot of architectural decisions. For example, if you lean on the zero trust, you can already eliminate a lot of options that don't comply to that
Correct.
solution. So in Azure, you need private endpoints, all those kind of things. But you can boilerplate out those types of stuff. Every unit that supports it has to have that. So that immediately limits a lot of other things that you need to do. But it's architecture then.
Yeah, but you cannot complain that the open source Terraform module has a lot of variables.
No.
Because you provide API with millions of accepted values that you can accept.
So that's the layer you have to put on top of that.
And that's what developers are teaching the DevOps people to do not specify, but you did it already.
Well, I told you, kind of, we teach, but we don't follow our own rules. That's fine.
That's fine. We don't follow the rules also.
That's the context. I mean, the open source module has to be usable by thousands, and within an organization, you can choose a slightly different path because you're more opinionated.
Yeah.
I want your opinion on this, a pattern I've seen, and I usually don't look at infrastructure stuff. I just
Yeah.
look at the infrastructure in Amazon directly.
Yeah.
I don't trust a lot of these tools.
Yeah.
I've seen the pattern of, for the sake of dry, we have one firewall.
Yeah.
And I've worked in many companies, I've seen it several times.
Yeah.
And this is like, we have 300 applications.
Yeah.
For the sake of dry, we have one firewall.
Yeah.
This comes from IAC usually.
Yeah.
Can I get your take on that situation?
Okay, look, I want, first, before we'll continue, I want to answer Victor's questions. Look, the best solution to the thing that you right now bring is that, well, how do we be flexible, saying that, well, in the end of it, there is technology which indeed accepts a bunch of parameters. And on the other hand, we want to sort of, limit it. The best solution that I have seen comes from the company Flexport. They had this idea that within their, let's say, infrastructure, they have, you can choose one of 3 tracks. The first one they called monorail. Least parameters, but most of the things are automatic. You just focus on kind of serverless type of thing. Ease of life, but less flexibility. They have something in the middle which is called paved way in the jungle. It's sort of built with modules where you have, let's say, kind of a bit of the flexibility, but kind of you have to stay on this paved road. You're not allowed to go far. And there's a third one, which is called Jumanji. What they were saying is that you get a paid AWS subscription, and that's it. No help, no support, that's it. Do what you want. But then kind of what they were saying is that if you want ultimate control of technology, you need to have ultimate capable engineers on your team. So that's kind of the best of kind of both worlds that I know for a fact the company was practicing. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
I think we have answered during the slides. But
okay. Anyway, yeah. So
De laatste vraag ging om...
right. The question about take. Yeah.
You see a lot of dry in infrastructure codes.
Yeah.
People don't want to repeat it.
Yeah.
But then sometimes these patterns are sort of repeated in the actual infrastructure that's created.
Yeah.
Like having one firewall for all institutions.
Yeah.
One security group. And then you
Yeah.
port 80 on one of them, you actually end up opening port 80 on all of production at once.
Yeah.
So I've seen this quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your opinion on this, like what is the cause of this? Because I've seen it
Right.
multiple times in multiple companies at this thing.
Right. Let me. I have. Let me show you one interesting thing. I have a slide that I knew somebody would ask this question. Sorry. No. Just a sec. Sorry. Just bear with me for a second. Where is it? I lost it. Just a sec. It's
the people who created these security groups, do they even know what is happening on the shop floor? Right? So it sounds like they're like very disconnected. That's my interpretation of it. They have no idea that what implication from their perspective of managing a simple security group, but they have no idea what it means.
So you see, my second list. There are a lot of silver bullets in our profession, contrary to famous Ed Brooks statement. And actually, all of them work until they don't. And this is a slide that I initially threw out because I didn't think I will have time to explain it. You see, if you will reduce your problem division of your perimeter to a very narrow field, it is very easy to believe that you are actually doing an amazing job. Typically, by the way, I see it with people who practice Scrum. They kind of focus on Scrum ceremonies, and sometimes it feels like cult-like, right? The same, what you describe is also here. Somebody said, well, let's do dry. We just focus on dry, and if we do dry, then kind of it goes great, right? But the problem is, the world is much bigger. The moment you take a step back, you realize it's not working. So what I want to say is that there are always trade-offs and there are also further consequences. So what is it that you're trying to do? Because you ultimately, you trade something for something. Yes, you have one source control, but then you need to accept the consequences that you do it. Is this what you want? I don't know. So most likely not. So, and this is where kind of we need to start getting pragmatic. So yes, it's good not to repeat yourself, but the standards and the solutions and standardization, it should be to the benefit of some of people who introduce it. If they don't, then probably do something different. So that's the take.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.